Welcome on Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton. Welcome to the Saturday conversation. Going to talk a little Longhorn football, spring practice action, as well as some news and notes from around the 40 acres. Let's start with the men's swimming and diving championship. I know this is odd, but I've got to mention it because anytime a Longhorn sets a world record in any sport, I think it's worth mentioning here on the channel. Hubert Koss in the backstroke, 100-meter backstroke, set a world record last night in the men's swimming and diving championships up in Federal Way, Washington. That's a little area just south of Seattle. Set a world record in the backstroke. Congratulations, Tim. I think 3 other Longhorns won gold medals last night. The Longhorns also will finish up the swimming and diving championships today. We'll see if the Longhorns have a chance to win a team national championships. We'll let you know about that as well. Also, baseball won again, this time on the road at Missouri. They are now 6-1 in conference. It's the Longhorns' best start in baseball in conference in 13 years. Jim Schlossnagle's got the guys going in the right direction. Also, Mike White and his team in softball, they're playing at Mississippi State this weekend. They decided to play 2 games this weekend because of 2 games on Friday because of inclement weather. The Longhorns lost on a walk-off hit in the first game of that doubleheader, but won on Friday night. So they split that doubleheader. The women still number 1 ranked team in the country at this point. Also, quick reminder, Texas women play today at 2:30. Texas women's basketball team at 2:30. They are in the Sweet 16. They're going up against the University of Tennessee. Longhorns narrowly beat Tennessee in the Moody Center earlier this year. This one's going to be in Birmingham, so it might be a crowd that favors the Volunteers a little bit. We'll have to wait and see about that later today, but that gets started at 2:30. Make sure you're checking that out. All right, the rest of this update is going to be football related, and so I'll get into that as quickly as possible with you. First of all, from a recruiting standpoint, Horns hosted roughly a half dozen to a dozen prospects Friday. First of all, I'll go over the one that's committed to Texas. That's Max Wright, the big offensive lineman from Melissa, was in town. He is already committed to Texas and remains committed to the Longhorns and made an unofficial visit on Friday. Now, some 5-star guys also were in town. Jalen Lott, young man out of Frisco's Panther Creek High School, was in town with his track team participating in the Texas Relays. He's a guy that the Longhorns desperately are interested in. His dad, James, also played football for the Longhorns as well and was a member of the Longhorn track team as well. 2 other 5-stars from out of state also in. Xavier Crowell, a running back out of Jackson, Alabama, was in town on Friday, as was Mark Bowman, a tight end out of Santa Ana, Mater Dei, California. Longhorns also expecting more official visitors not official visitors, unofficial visitors today and over the weekend, rest of the weekend, as a lot of kids are out getting in unofficial visits to teams around the country. And these are all highly, highly recruited kids, obviously, guys that Texas is going after right now. So they are taking a number of visits. Crowell, Bowman, Max Wright, some of the main names at this point who've been on campus along with Jalen Lott as well. All right, let's talk a little spring football, if you don't mind. I thought it would be good this morning to really go over what I would call a little bit of a synopsis of what we know at this point through 2 practices. The Longhorns have had 2 practices as of this morning. They'll have their 3rd today. I hope to have some news and notes around that. But from the first 2 practices, as well as a walkthrough that they had on Friday, I think we're starting to learn a little bit about this team. It's not overwhelming amount of information by any stretch, but quarterback is no surprise. Arch Manning remains number 1 there. Trey Owens and KJ Lacey are both participating and practicing. Owens and Lacey could have a little bit of a battle for the number 2 spot, although I think that right now Owens is the leader. Lacey has looked good early in camp. That's the freshman out of Mobile, who is the exact opposite almost physically of both Arch Manning and Trey Owens. Lacey goes about 5'11", 6 foot, 185 pounds at the most, whereas Trey Owens 6'5", Arch Manning 6'4", both of them well above 210, 215, 20 pounds at this point. So very different looking, but all sizes can be effective, I guess, is the best way to put that at quarterback. All right, running back, we've mentioned this, and probably the biggest and most encouraging news thus far in spring is the return, of Christian Clark, the running back out of Arizona, who was sidelined this past year as a true freshman with a Achilles injury. Clark now back and practicing with the team, as well as Trey Wisner also practicing with the team. Wisner, the positive note there isn't so much that he's practicing. We all knew that, and Sark said he may take it a little easy on him this year after being so used as a year ago in rushing for more than 1,000 yards. Wisner's positive outlook, in my opinion, is that he's gained a good 5 to 7 pounds of muscle, even since spring balls, or even since winter conditioning after the bowl games and stuff. So I think he looks terrific and set for a good season in 2025 if everything stays on track. As far as Clark, it's just the fact that he's out there and has been able to cut and react the way he has at this point. At wide receiver, Ryan Wingo continues to be one of the talks of spring practice through 2 days so far. A young man who changed his jersey from number 5 to number 1. Looks like he's going to be wide receiver number 1 for the Longhorns. DeAndre Moore, a young man that started for the Longhorns a lot last year, is out so far in spring with a toe injury. That's given way to Parker Livingstone. And I mentioned this earlier this week. Livingstone out of Lovejoy High School has looked really, really good and polished early in camp. He's well ahead of some other guys, including the 4 very highly touted and talented wide receivers: Michael Terry, Jamie French, Khalif Lockett, and Dalen McCutcheon. McCutcheon has made some nice plays early in camp, I'm told, at this point. At tight end, we've got a couple of guys that are known commodities somewhat. That's Spencer Shannon and Jordan Washington. Neither of them have played extensive minutes, but they are a little bit ahead of Will Randall. Another guy to watch out for who has made some noise so far, still early, is Emory Winston, young man out of Georgia that came in spring camp. We are waiting Nick Townsend. He is expected to arrive at Texas in the summer. He's a highly touted recruit, but Emory Winston, somebody that may get a little playing time this year, depending on how Spencer Shannon and Jordan Washington develop, because Winston looks like he could be a real help in the Texas passing game if he gets an opportunity. Along the offensive line, it's pretty much, as of right now, it is status quo from what we reported earlier in the week. At left tackle, we have Trevor Gooseby, of course. He's being backed up by Nick Brooks right now. That's the true freshman out of the Atlanta area. Cole Hudson continues to work at center. Right guard is DJ Campbell. Right tackle is Brandon Baker, although Andre Kojo is pushing there as well. That's going to be an update a little bit that we're hearing Kojo is definitely pushing. Left guard at this point is Nato Umeozulu, with Nate Kibble and Jaden Chapman both pushing Nato Umeozulu at this point. I will say this, one thing that I've heard is that both Cole Hudson and DJ Campbell are kind of being the leaders of this offensive line at this point. That's somewhat natural in the idea that both of those guys are the ones that have started double-digit games for the Longhorns and played a bunch last season. So be on the lookout for those two to continue in a leadership role, one that is left vacant by Jake Majors heading off to the NFL, a 4-year starter, as well as Hayden Connor, a 3-year starter, Kelvin Banks, a 3-year starter. You get the picture. That offensive line room needs some leadership, and those two guys, Hudson and Campbell, hope to provide it. Along the defensive front, it's really been interesting to hear some folks from behind the scenes talk about Cole Brevard, the transfer out of Purdue, Travis Shaw out of North Carolina, the transfer up front, as well as Hero Canoe. Canoe has started off a little bit ahead of some other guys, but it sounds like both Brevard and Shaw are making up ground pretty quickly. What's good to note is Alex January has been running with the first team since the very first practice and continues to do so. That's the guy that's a true sophomore out of Duncanville. Hope that continues because he has been a bright spot in last year's recruiting class, maybe a little bit more than expected, which is great to hear. One of the stronger points of the team this year will be that group that is out front at the edge, including Colin Simmons, who's changed his jersey number to number 1. Ethan Burke. Right now, Colton Vosick is not seeing any time because he's healing from a offseason surgery. In his stead, Zena Umeozulu has stepped up into a second-team role, as has Lance Jackson, the true freshman out of Texarkana. Those guys all getting time right now with the first and second string. I would add that part of the reason they're getting time there is because Trey Moore, who returned to Texas after playing defensive end most of last year, he's now playing an off-ball linebacker spot and getting into that rotation and practicing that this spring. He may return to a defensive end role later in the year as the Texas sees fit, and to give the Texas defense more versatility. At linebacker, Anthony Hill continues to be a vocal leader of this team. That's no surprise there. Leonga Lafau, however, may be, and Steve Sarkisian said this, may be the best teammate anybody has on this team. He's another guy that's playing a lot. Brad Spence is working his way. That's the Arkansas transfer, working his way into the lineup. Anthony Smith among that group as well. At defensive back, one of the talks so far is just how talented Texas is, but they've got to figure out how to put it all together. Jalen Gilbo is getting time at cornerback opposite Manny Muhammad, but behind Gilbo is Kobe Black. Not only Kobe Black, but we're hearing really good reports early on Cade Phillips, a young man out of Fort Bend Hightower High School in the Houston area, has really come on, according to folks that we're hearing. Behind Manny Muhammad on the other side is Santana Wilson. So we'll see how that goes. At nickel, in place of Jalen Gilbo at this point, has been Wardell Mack, as well as Grayson Littleton, the true freshman out of the Tampa area in Florida. He's been working there. At safety, it's been the usual suspects. Jelani McDonald has been working at safety along with Michael Taff. Both those guys started multiple games for the Longhorns last year. McDonald may also see some time at nickel, but right now he's getting a lot of run at safety primarily. I will say this, Derek Williams is out this spring, and also two other guys to mention or worth mentioning at this point, Xavier Filsami and Jordan Johnson-Rebel are also in that mix as well. Zealous Hicks, another freshman that I've been told has looked somewhat good in limited work thus far, according to sources. I want to add this, Will Stone and Bert Auburn are the two kickers that everybody is looking for to see who wins that starting job. Of course, Stone replaced Auburn late last year in the playoffs. Auburn, we'll see what happens here with Texas at kicker, but both guys are back. Stone, is my understanding, has started off being first string thus far. I will say this, Jack Bomeister, the punter that transferred in from Utah, looks like he's got a strong grasp on the punting job. That's not a surprise. He averaged 45 yards a kick last year for Utah. That's 5 more than Michael Kern produced a year ago, 5 yards more than Michael Kern produced a year ago for the Longhorns as well. Overall, a couple things that I think are the big takeaways. I'm really hearing positive things on Ryan Wingo out of the gate. People think that he's just ready to roll. Arch Manning has taken on a leadership role. I mentioned Cole Hudson and DJ Campbell leading the offensive line. In general, on offense, I feel pretty confident about where they're at, especially with the return of Christian Clark. I think he's going to be a guy that Texas might be able to rely on if he's healthy, along with Trey Wisner as they get CJ Baxter back and going sometime late this fall. So I feel pretty good about that. I do think Texas still needs a wide receiver in the portal and possibly, and most likely, a tight end that can be an inline guy and flex out a little bit just to have some elite experience, or not elite, but some good experience there at the major college level, because they are so young or inexperienced at tight end heading into this year. On defense overall, I think that the talent level is probably, in my opinion, the storyline. Texas is extremely talented at just about every position on defense. Full period. There's nothing more I can say about that. Do I think they might be able to be more talented, say, at cornerback? Yes, but I still think they have NFL guys there potentially. So I look at this Texas defense, and I've had conversations with them, and I think they might be able to be better in 2025 than 2024. I don't know that because I think 2024 had some real experience on the back end. Jahdae Barron, Andrew Makuba, uh, they had a real sense of what they were trying to do in that secondary, and they're going to be long-term NFL guys, both of them. So those will be difficult to replace. A guy like Baron Sorrell will be difficult to replace as well. But all in all, we'll see how it goes. Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton also headed off to the pros too. So big believer in what the Texas defense could bring to bear, though, overall. And I think the biggest piece for me is just general talent level on the defense is I don't want to say at an all-time high because I don't think that's fair based on 30 plus years of doing this and seeing some teams even before that, but it's near an all-time high. I'll put it that way. It's definitely within. I don't know if it is an all-time high, but it's definitely within spitting distance of the last 20 years, and that means some national championship teams that folks have been, or a national championship team that folks have been a part of. As well. All right. And want to say thank you to our sponsor for today's Saturday conversation. That's Laura Baker. She has an open house tomorrow from 2 to 4 over at Lazy River Cove. That's 7608 Lazy River Cove. Make sure you check it out. Laura at andyallenteam.com or give her a call 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. 7608 Lazy River Cove. Thank you, Laura, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, we'll have more. Jerry and CJ and Jeff are all out at the Texas Relays today, as well as monitoring recruiting updates for you folks for guys that are still coming into town or already in town and visiting with Coach Steve Sarkisian, General Manager Brandon Harris, and others over on the 40 Acres. Until later, thanks for watching this episode of On Texas Football. Hook 'em.